Well, without further ado, let's get to meet our August visitor, Ms. Akunna E Cook, who is the United States Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs. You're welcome to the morning show, madam. Good to have you. Good morning.
Thank you, Stephen. It's fantastic to be here in Lagos, the economic capital of Nigeria, and frankly, for so much of West Africa. And it is the perfect place to begin a tour across the continent. As you mentioned, I'll be here in Nigeria, moving on to Kenya, South Africa, and Namibia to talk about Prosper Africa and the Biden-Harris's Build Back Together campaign and ensure that we are publicizing for U.S. companies and investors all of the fantastic opportunities across Africa.
All right, thank you so much. Of course, we understand that you are leading the Prosper Africa Economic Diplomacy Delegation to the 4 countries that you have mentioned, including Nigeria, and Nigeria being your first stop. What categories of business leaders and policymakers will you engage with during your visit here in Lagos and Abuja? And what are some of your goals on this 4-nation trip?
Well, here in Lagos, I'll be speaking with creative industries, producers, content makers, distributors, and others, and really trying to understand how the United States and Africa can work on driving more investment into Africa and specifically Nigeria's creative industries. We know that there is enormous potential just on the economic side to drive more GDP growth and to create more wealth using the creative industries. But it really goes beyond that. We see the creative industries as not only a driver for economic growth, but as a way for Africans to tell more diverse stories and correct the record on the risk perception here in Africa. We know that the stories that have been told about Africa have tended to be one-sided, but as we've seen Nollywood and Afro beats grow, we're seeing more and more interest in what's happening in Africa and what's happening today in Africa, the tremendous opportunities, the brilliance, the innovation, and so that's a part of all that we want to do. In terms of our goals, it's quite simple. We want more American companies looking at Africa for business opportunities and opportunities to invest. And we want African entrepreneurs and investors to also look at the tremendous entrepreneurial spirit, particularly among young people here in Africa. Because we know that there are African solutions to global problems, and we're not going to find them if we're not here looking and speaking to stakeholders about those issues.
Oh, lovely. Well, thank you very much, Akunna, for joining us. I mean, you've touched on it already, but let's talk more about Prosper Africa itself. What is it all about? How does it work in practice? And most importantly, how is it different from other U.S. government programs? Are there specific U.S. government agencies involved in it, for example?
Femi, thank you for that question. Prosper Africa is a very new and innovative way of doing business for the U.S. government. It is about harmonizing the tools of the 17 U.S. government agencies that contribute to two-way trade and investment. So unlike many other programs that we have, which are very successful, that's about taking U.S. Funding and deploying it, this is about leveraging what the United States is already doing, leveraging the private sector of the United States, and making it easier for entrepreneurs and investors to access the tools that already exist in the U.S. government and to create additional tools. So, for example, since 2019, when Prosper Africa was launched, the U.S. government has facilitated over 800 deals, averaging about $50 billion, or totaling $50 billion in 45 countries. So you think about how you have a one-stop shop for U.S. businesses, but also African businesses to access all of the tools that the U.S. government brings to bear.
All right. Well, since you said Prosper Africa, launched in 2019, now can you give us some of the success stories so far?
Well, the Biden-Harris administration launched Prosper Africa Build Together campaign. But one of my favorite success stories of Prosper Africa is the Chicago Public Teachers Pension Fund, which invested $20 million in a fund for African entrepreneurs working in the healthcare space and some other industries. That's a perfect example of tapping into the enormous potential of capital in the United States, which is over $800 trillion of institutional investors, pension funds, insurance companies, and others that are investing and deploying capital around the world. And so being able to make that kind of connection for the Chicago Public Teachers Pension Fund with this fund that was based in Africa was a tremendous success story. And there are plenty of other stories, including helping out shea butter companies in Ghana get their products into U.S. supermarkets. And so there's quite a mix. The Build Together campaign is focusing on diaspora businesses, women-owned businesses, and young people, because we know that those linkages between the United States and Nigeria and across the continent are exactly what we need to drive two-way trade and investment.
All right. In the last few years, Nigeria and the United States, as you know, have witnessed growing cultural, artistic, sports, film, and music ties. In particular, the creative industries, which you have touched on a bit, have the potential to create jobs for millions of people from Hollywood to Nollywood. Is Prosper Africa also, I mean, what is the depth of the interest that you have in the creative industries in Nigeria? Yes, we have won the Grammys. We're also coming for the Oscars. But tell us in details the sort of interest and the level of investment that you will be looking at in those specific areas.
Well, as I mentioned, my focus here in Nigeria is very heavily on the creative industries. We have seen that the creative industries sector has grown year over year faster than many other industries, if not the fastest growing industry. And as you mentioned, we know that Nollywood is taking over, Afrobeats is taking over, and there are much more potential and growing potential as we can digitize content. And so those kinds of opportunities, particularly for young people here and across Africa, are huge. We know, for example, back in the United States, as Atlanta and Georgia, Louisiana, so several other cities and states started to really invest in creating an enabling environment to nurture the creative industries, we saw a takeoff in the GDP in those states. And I know that the same is possible here in Nigeria. It is already happening. This is an industry that employs over 500,000 people, that is creating $4 billion per year in revenue already, and is poised to continue to grow. A colleague of mine and other commentators have referred to the creative industries as the next oil. We think it will be bigger than oil because this is really about the future of Africa.
Absolutely, definitely sounds like there's a lot to be looking forward to. If we shift our focus now to gender, we are all well aware that women entrepreneurs in Nigeria are a growing market force, serving as a critical source of innovation and job creation, as well as fueling economic growth. How does the U.S. government seek to support women's inclusive participation in the economy here in Africa?
Well, as I mentioned, supporting women-owned businesses is a tremendous focus of Prosper Africa. One of my favorite programs at the State Department, Tech Women, supports tech entrepreneurs, women tech entrepreneurs, brings them to the United States, introduces them to potential partners at Silicon Valley and across the country. Half the applications for that program come right out of here in Nigeria. And so we know that there are tremendous opportunities for women, particularly in the digital and tech industries, and we want to enable that. Partly because we all know that when women are economically empowered, that actually helps families and helps nations to grow. And so we're very much focused on figuring out how we can empower more women, particularly in the digital fields.
Yes, so let's talk more about the digital field. As you know, digital technologies are creating exciting new opportunities now, particularly for young entrepreneurial and innovative population like Nigeria's. Now, the Nigerian fintech ecosystems have maintained its growth trajectory, producing 5 out of the 7 unicorns on the continent. Now, how do you think tech startups and digital ecosystems can help drive sustainable economic growth in Nigeria?
It is absolutely the key, as you mentioned. This is home to some of the most successful companies, entrepreneurs, young people that are finding creative solutions to some of the most vexing problems, including how we get more underbanked individuals to have access to capital and credit and the financial system. The fintech industry grew out of Africa. You saw their African young people creating innovative solutions, and I believe that will transcend not just in fintech, but across other areas, including climate and including health. Right, so I know that there are technological solutions to a lot of the problems that are vexing us across the globe, particularly right now, and the solutions to those are going to come out of Africa. So building those ecosystems, ensuring that entrepreneurs have access to capital, ensuring that investors are aware of the tremendous opportunities here in Africa, that is going to be a huge part of ensuring that we do find those African solutions and that we do ensure that they scale and meet the challenges of today.
Okay, it is often said that Africa's fast-growing population and markets present tremendous long-term growth opportunities. What are the greatest opportunities that the U.S. Sees on the African continent today, and how committed is the U.S. government and its private sector to deepening economic and commercial engagement on the continent?
Well, so much of the U.S. private sector is already looking at Africa without the help of the U.S. government, although, of course, our goal is to try to scale and move as much of U.S. interest. But companies in the United States and investors already see the tremendous opportunity here. And so our job as the U.S. government is to facilitate that, is to move that forward. We will be focusing in the 4 countries that we'll be visiting on meeting with U.S. companies, meeting with policymakers to address some of the enabling environment challenges that have prohibited us from seeing more growth. But I'm very confident that the U.S. government's commitment is steady. This is the most exciting part of the U.S.-Africa relationship, driving trade and investment. And so I'm very excited to be here in Nigeria, kicking off this tour, and excited to see all that we do, particularly around the creative industries, digital, climate, and health technology.
Lovely. Akunna, unfortunately, we are coming to the end of our conversation here, but I do want to ask you before we let you go that, as the daughter of a Nigerian immigrant, or Nigerian immigrants rather, you embody the diversity of the United States. Can you take us through your personal career journey to becoming the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs?
Femi, it's a great question. When I was a young girl, I actually wanted to be an actress, but my parents, being the quintessential Nigerian immigrants, thought that I should pursue medicine. But it was really when I was in college that I discovered diplomacy, and I actually started my career at the State Department as a Foreign Service officer. And I was a Foreign Service officer for almost 10 years before pursuing a law degree. I practiced law, advising companies on public policy and corporate governance. I helped to start a nonprofit organization, and then eventually ran my own nonprofit organization before coming back to government. The through line through all of that has been really about empowering the Black diaspora economically. That is, if you look at throughout my career, has been the focus of it. How do we ensure that we are creating a bright and prosperous future for people of African descent? It's my passion, and I believe it's what I was born to do, and I'm thrilled to be here as Deputy Assistant Secretary for Africa in the country of my parents' birth.
Well, congratulations, and we wish you success. Thank you very much for joining us on the morning show this morning.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.